Welcome to the Nature's Image Farm podcast. We're glad you're here. I'm Greg.
And I'm Susan. And together we're raising 7 kids on the farm and learning life lessons along the way.
So pull up a chair, rest your heels, and let's talk all things bees, homesteading, and the old-time ways.
Let's get after it.
If you're interested in NUCS, packages, queens, or supplies, visit us on the web at nature'simagefarm.com.
Well, hey guys, welcome back to the Nature's Image Farm podcast, YouTube channel, and live stream. We are real excited to have you on board tonight. We've got a great guest that's going to come on tonight and talk about his experience in sideline beekeeping, growing into a commercial scale. His experience working with one of the most well-known beekeepers in the world, who's influenced so many folks. We're really looking forward to getting into tonight's conversation. I want to thank everyone for joining us here tonight. There are so many folks here and off to the comments here. I really appreciate you guys joining in and hanging out with us tonight. It's going to be a fun talk. There's, one of the best things about beekeeping, we say it all the time, that bees are just the conduit to the people. Bees have brought me all over the country in so many different states. I've met so many different folks from all different kinds, walks of life, different ways to beekeep, different ways to think about things, different things to practice all those things. It's truly an honor to live this life, calling so many folks friends, getting to know them, how they keep their bees. It's one of the not only coolest things in the world, but it's one of the most tremendous blessings. Tonight's guest is one of those fellas where you can't help but just, when you spend time with him, he's just a good dude, solid, a heart that's just solid gold, good through and through, salt of the earth. And he's the kind of guy, when you see him, you can see how passionate he is about beekeeping. You can see he's on fire. He's got the fire in the eyes. He's got the grit in the gut. And when you have the honor of working bees with him too, you can't just help to know that this guy is going somewhere in a hurry. And just being able to share in that, see him and support it is just an awesome thing. So I'm going to thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight. It's going to be an excellent conversation where we're going to dig into some of the sideline bee business stuff, growing up into commercial, what that's like, what kind of experiences does it take to get there, what kind of hard lessons learned are there, what are some of the challenges and kind of growing, what are the things that are leverage points or force multipliers. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm really looking forward to getting in tonight's talk. So whether you're listening on the Nature's Image Farm podcast, you're listening to us here live on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel, or you're watching the replay later, we want to thank you for joining. Hailing from the hills of southern Appalachia, the frog-gigging, honey-slinging, bee ranch, and the one, the only, Seth Hill.
I like that. What's up, everybody?
Seth, welcome.
Hey, man, you still got your big voice on.
I got the big voice off now. Man, it's good to see you on here. It's so cool to have such good folks on here tonight. Seth, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is pretty new to me. This is like the second time I've ever talked over a computer, so we're delving into all
honor to have you on here tonight, Seth. We're going to get a couple of things just right out of the gate, so we don't forget them. Seth has a brand new YouTube channel called the Appalachian Bee Ranch. Be sure at some point tonight you go over there and hit the like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, drop him some comments, show him some love, and help this rascal get that channel off to a good start. He's a good dude, and you'll see why here. If you've never met Seth before, Seth, walk us through who Seth Hill is, and where are you at with your beekeeping, and how in the world you get here?
Well, Seth's a good old boy. I grew up in Lakemont, Georgia, which is not far from Clayton. It's like the seat of our town. Everybody around here refers to it as Rabun County, and if you're outside of Rabun County, people kind of give you the eyebrow. Like, what do you mean the county? But anyway, so I grew up, around here, and I guess what got me into beekeeping was actually before I ever worked for Bob, me and my dad would go do, we would cut bees out of houses. He's a general contractor. And we started doing that. And so when me and him would team up and go do the cutout, and I would get the bees and he would get paid. So I kind of got the short end of the stick.
No doubt.
But, you know, and I was not a very good beekeeper. They would abscond or die or whatever. I didn't know, you know, my rear end from a hole in the ground as far as bee boxes goes. And then I ended up giving it up about my senior year in high school. All I cared about was hunting and fishing. That's all I would ever do for the most part. Junior to senior year after school, homework was second priority. Finding that buck or finding that bass was priority number one. And, you know, I mean, academically speaking, that's not that great, but, you know,
Your life priorities were on point, weren't they? Literally.
Absolutely. Find the food. Heck yeah, man. But I forgot what I was saying now. Oh, yeah. So I gave up beekeeping my senior year of high school. Fast forward 2 years to 2020. I'm 2 years deep at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, pursuing a wildlife management degree. And our lovely friend COVID showed up. So that kind of gave me the boot there. They kicked everybody out of school and said, you know, everything's online. And I came home looking for a summertime gig, and I didn't even think about it. My dad was the one that actually suggested it because I was just going to work with him until they let school back in. And he's like, why don't you go get a job with Bob? You like doing bees. I'm like, yeah, I'll try it out. And I filled out my 2 months. I call it my 2-month contract. And then I was like, well, I think I want to stay on another month. And, you know, he likes the way I work. So we kept staying on. And then a month turned into till next summer. And then next summer turned into just, you know, 2 years down the road. And then somewhere along that line, me and Bob had a serious conversation about starting my own bee business. And so the rest is history. Here we are with a YouTube channel and 65 colonies, looking to go to 300 this year. So
nice. That's awesome. I don't know, you know, a lot of folks, we get started in beekeeping for a bazillion different reasons, and we struggle and we flounder and we do this and we do that. Very few folks can say, hey, you know, I got my coming up through Bob Binnie. That's sort of a big deal to have that kind of not only an educational point, but a professional point of reference to then, you know, possibly model the things that you want to see in your business as you grow. You know, from that, talk to us a little bit about, you know, what's it like working with Bob all these years?
Oh man, that road has been one of the best I've ever traveled. I've met so many great people along the way. I've made more friends working under and around Bob than I'll probably ever make in my whole life. Bob is one of the best teachers there ever is and probably ever will be when it comes to beekeeping. His methodology behind teaching people is not pointing out just their successes, but also their failures. And when he points those out, he doesn't pick them apart and try to tear you down, but say, hey, he really explains what that mistake will do down the road. It's not just like, don't do that. I don't have time to explain why. I'm unfortunately not that great of a teacher. I'm trying to take notes as I go, but working under one of the best beekeepers in, you know, this generation, I feel like personally, in my opinion, is unbeatable. I've had a golden opportunity thrust upon me, and I just decided to run with it.
What an amazing thing to be able to do. I mean, there's you know, you're right. You know, I've spent time with you and Bob out in the yard, and, you know, of course you have fun and you can cut up, but you're always at the same time, all just digging in, getting it done. Here's what we're doing. One box, one pallet at a time, 1 yard at a time. And one thing I was so impressed with by Bob and all you guys as a crew working together, it was just like a machine where you didn't have to say all the things that needed done. You just knew, you know, just one thing after another. And that does take a certain quality mindset out of the individual that you got to have to be able to work like that. But it also takes amazing leadership to be able to put guys together who all can work together, who can jump in and out of the truck all day long, who can break bread together, who can get along. You know, that is an incredible thing that Bob's done too. And Bob does have the heart of a teacher, you know, and you know, you might be in there and he might be like, you know, now Seth, if you move that frame over this way here instead, then, you know, he can look at each cell as an asset and as a yield and can help tune up every single frame, every box, every pallet, every yard, so that every cell is moving forward. And that's a super big deal, not only for the experienced beekeeper, but for someone who's growing their business, learning from the very beginning, not only the frugality of growing a business, but literally learning how to rub together 2 pennies to get a nickel, all those things that matter. What you do now makes a big difference in just a couple months. Can you talk to us a little bit about what is some of the greatest things that you've learned, beekeeping lessons that you've learned from Bob?
Some of the best beekeeping lessons, oh boy, there's a lot, because I literally learned from block one, you know. Nuts and bolts would be stuff like, don't ever put the hive tool down. You know, if you got like 10 colonies, you're probably not going to be worried about that. But if you're looking at making some jumps, or, you know, they're robbing, there's no honey flow, you got to get moving. You know, little stuff like that matters. You know, seconds add up to minutes, minutes add up to hours, and hours add up to precious time. So probably, you know, stuff like that, a lot of my nuts and bolts. And then not necessarily the gift of foresight, but, you know, it's kind of like when you're teaching your kid to drive or your little brother to drive. You teach them to look ahead down the road instead of right in front of the car. You know, he's kind of taught me to do that with the bees. Like, what are these bees going to do a month or two down the road? Or where do these bees need to be 6 months away? Or what's going to happen between now and then that can mess with these bees, that I can kind of, you know, if there's a farmer with some, like some crops nearby or something, you know, get in touch with them, or you know, just a lot of proactive steps to really kind of predict, not necessarily predict, for the lack of a better word, predict what your bees are going to do and what to do about it before they do it, so to speak.
It's an amazing thing to be able, if you think, I mean, just think about that, you know, however many years you mentioned how long you've been, you know, keeping bees. You see one repetition or one yearly cycle of something, right? And then you have the next year to try to put in play what you think you saw out of last year and those lessons learned, right? And then you get that third year and that fourth year, and you start getting into that fifth year, and it's like, okay, well, I'm starting to see, okay, you know, starting to get a hang for this. I'm starting to really find the handle on this thing. But then something always happens, and you get humbled quickly, whether you're coming from a place of pride or not. The bees are one of the greatest humblers that I think I've ever known. And I know it's one of the greatest humblers that Bob's ever known too. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so successful this many years later. I mean, if you just think about it, think about all the things that seemingly have gone wrong in all years past, not only in a hive, but in a yard or in a season for Bob, and constantly working through it and always trying to move things in a positive direction. I remember it was only, let's see, was it this year or last year? The years are flying by. I think it was 2 years ago where you guys had just a really, really poor sourwood crop. And what do you
About
do?
zero.
Yeah, you know, and then I
Oh,
think we
right.
saw. Talk to us about what is that? What is it like working with Bob when you're going through things that are, for a lot of folks at smaller scale, if their financial opportunities in their business aren't diversified, and they are only looking at financial gain from the crop they're getting ready to collect. And I imagine you got 65 colonies, or you've got 200, you've got 300 colonies, and you've gone all in on equipment and frames, and you got these bees growing, and you are tapped out, and you need these bees to hit sourwood in a big way.
Right.
And then it dries up. Like that can absolutely end a lot of beekeepers.
Oh, absolutely.
And a lot of apiaries. Talk to us, Seth, about what it's like when you hit those little bumps, those little adversities, not only with Bob at Blue Ridge, but even with your own beekeeping.
So I don't know if all of y'all have watched the YouTube video I put out, but I fortunately have a lot of help. I got my dad backing me a little bit, and then I've got Bob, who I can lean on when I need to. And as I said, ABR would not be possible without him. So y'all go comment on Bob's channel and say, hey, thank you for supporting Seth for his YouTube channel, yada, yada, yada. Y'all give him a big thank you. And
That's right.
when Bob hits those roadblocks, he's hit so many, it's as though he knows the side street to get around it and still come out ahead. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if he's figured out how to fly over them or jump, but he always seems to find a way to capitalize on failure. That is the key to success in any industry. If you can capitalize on your failures, or, you know, at least break even just to survive, that would be the key to sustaining and, you know, becoming successful down the road, I feel like. And you know, it's got a lot to do with mindset. Having a good mindset during a downtime. Hold on, my computer's doing something funny. Sorry, guys. There we go. Oh my gosh. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, mindset's a big deal, and I know if anyone has spent time with Bob, he's always thinking, he's planning ahead. You know, he can see those orange barrels and those detour signs in his mind before you can even physically see him on the road, and he's already planning on, okay, I'm going to reach down, I'm going to put this in 4 low, I'm going to turn the wheel to the left, and then we're going to go 100 yards, and we're going to put it on the right, we're back on, you know. And so he's had years of experience figuring that out, and to be able to, the way that he does is, even when he has difficulty throughout the year, or let's say challenges like every beekeeper does, I think it's awesome that he's able to, you guys are right there along with him in the conversations in the truck, you're working it out. It's one thing to be able to learn from a beekeeper and say, wow, they're doing these things great. Like, they are really great at making splits or making honey. He really knows how to super, he really knows how to bring a crop in. And that's fantastic. But to be able to learn from a beekeeper of what to do when things go wrong, or when things don't go the way that you want them or need them to, like, that is huge. I know, Seth, talk to us a little bit about your beekeeping as you've grown to 65 colonies. I think you're famous for, I don't know if I heard you say this when I was down working with you and Bob, or if I maybe caught it in one of Bob's videos. And if you didn't know, the magic man behind the camera on Bob's videos is this fella here, you know, Seth Hill. So Seth gets to see things. Seth, I got a glimpse into that, run around with Bob down in Florida on that series. And you're so, you know, busy trying to just not screw up the shot for Bob and just keep everything, you know, and capture what you see. You're seeing what Bob is trying to portray through a camera lens. And then when you see it back later, you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's mind blowing. You've got to see all these different opportunities from behind a camera and in person. How has that helped shape you as you've grown to 65 colonies? Have you had some detours and some roadblocks along the way, and how have you worked through those?
I've had a few. I didn't have a whole lot of roadblocks until this season. This season, like all the roadblocks from year 1 and 2, decided to show up in season 3. But I like to kind of say, I don't know if anybody in here has seen the movie Jurassic Park, but in the second one, I forget all the characters' names. Obviously Jeff Goldblum is talking to the old guy, the guy who did the island, and he said, I'm not going to make the same mistakes. And Jeff Goldblum says, no, you're making all new ones. That's exactly how me and Bob's beekeeping relationship is. He advises me on what mistakes can be made so that I can make all new ones.
Nice.
And figure it out by myself, which is good. You know, I like to say, with no pain, there is no gain. You know, to succeed, you must first fail a couple times. One of my favorite quotes is from Thomas Edison. He said, I did not fail at creating the light bulb. I just found 200 ways how not to make it.
Nice. That's beautiful.
That's one of my favorite quotes of all time, because he's exactly correct. you have, and it, you know, again, this just goes back to the mindset thing. You have to look at it as though, well, I didn't fail. I just didn't do it right. And next time, or, you know, on down the road, I'll know, you know, and, you know, that's how you learn. You mess it up and you fix it. But, you know, with the certain, you know, obviously there's certain roadblocks where it's like you said, that's do or die. This past year, had I not had a little bit of a, you know, a safety net, I probably would not be as far along as I am. I had two major like trees fall across the road while you're driving down the road. I had a truck breakdown middle of summer, June 1, truck took a crap, was in the shop for a month and a half during, you
The
know,
wrong time of year.
peak, yeah, peak
If there
season.
was ever a right time, yeah.
Yeah. And I had actually worked my way up to 150 colonies at the end of last year. And a few of my neighbors did not treat properly. I think, I don't know that for a fact. I'm not pointing fingers and saying, you don't treat bees. I'm just saying, I picked up some mites from somewhere and lost between the neighborhood of 30 or 40 colonies. So that set me back a little bit. And, you know, if you can weather the storm long enough, the universe kind of has a way of presenting itself or showing itself or giving you some opportunities that you should take advantage of. It's just a matter of whether or not you can hold on long enough to get that last gulp of air and, you know, try to come out on top again.
There's definitely something special about when you're in tune with that you just said, universe, God, when you know you have that call to do this and you know that it's going to be nothing but blood and mud and guts.
Oh yeah, buddy.
And you prepare for that and you know that. And I think the difference with beekeeping or I mean really farming in general, whether it's bee farming or anything else, a lot of folks can't hack it, and it's not because that the folks who can are somehow superior, but one of the challenges is mindset, and it's one of those things to where I think some folks are born with it. I think some folks can develop it, but if we are too attached and too caught up with only succeeding, right? Or if we say this year I'm growing from 65 to 300, and you are hell bent on 300, and you get in there and you do some things, and I say this because I've heard you say this, and I don't know if it's from working with you in the yards or if I've heard it you and Bob talking about it, but we are all guilty of getting in there, and just because we can doesn't mean we should. But how many times have we gone in there and split the splits of our splits and then split them out one or two more times?
Oh
Just
yeah,
because
buddy.
yes, we can get them queen right, and yes, it is a colony going into the winter time. But there's one thing that I always try to remind myself is at first you are so geared up and motivated to create the beast. That's all you can think about is create the beast, right? I'm creating this beast. It's one thing to create the beast. It's another thing altogether to maintain it. That beast needs fed. It needs watered. It needs
Yep.
kept on a short leash. And if not, that rascal gets off and bites you in the rear. It's happened to me over and over and over again. And we all have little protocols and safety nets. We develop those every single year to help sometimes keep us from ourselves, but knowing that we are, I think beekeepers that are going to business for themselves, they are risky. Like we are okay with risking resources and banking on the weather. And because a lot of it comes down to just some things that we can't control. And there's a fine line and an art to riding that line. Talk to us a little bit, Seth, about what has been some of your safety nets as you have learned who you are as a beekeeper, and as you've learned how your beekeeping tends to kind of show itself. What are some safety nets that help buffer that process to where you still have those assets, which is the bees, year after year?
A lot of those safety nets comes in as a double screen board most of the time, saving the small ones, the splits, you know, later on down the road. Those are probably one of the most single important tools in my operation. you know, as far as keeping bees alive. Other than that, the safety net has been just ride it till the wheels fall off. Half a gallon of coffee and the will to live, buddy. I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a minute. I'm sure I've got some CYAs in place somehow in my brain, but most of the time it's kind of like you say, I created this beast and now I got to trank it, tame it, and stick it back in the cage before it goes nuts on me again. I haven't had anything really get out from under me too bad. So I don't know. I haven't really, I don't know. That's a tricky one.
What happened with you said you went into winter with 150,
right?
Knowing you like I do, you were banking on 350 or 4 coming out of the following year, building up on that. What, if you don't mind sharing with this, what happened to that 150, and how have you been successful maintaining the 65 that you do have?
So that goes back to the mites. I got into some mites, my treatments. I'm trying to remember my treatment dates. I had my book right here, but I knew that question was going to come up. That's why I had my book. But after the treatments were done, I got lackadaisical and did my washes and was like, okay, I'm clean. We're good. Feed them, get them ready for the winter time. I sold approximately 30. So that backed me back down to like 120. I wasn't going to sell them. And then I was like, well, I need some money. So I put up an ad for some singles. I sold them, and then I cannot remember the exact date, but I went into my bee yards and was just getting ready to feed, and I got to looking at the fronts, and I was like, huh, that's awkward looking flight. They were flying out, and wax cappings were flying out behind them. That's how fast they were robbing. They were robbing each other out. And so I popped the lid, and I'm like, oh, that one's dead. Popped 5 more lids. I was like, oh, these are dead. I was like, oh. And I didn't have a mite wash kit with me. I was going to feed and, you know, ride back home. So I went back. I think I skipped a day because of inclement weather or something. We had a freak storm come through. And I skipped 2 days. That's what it was. We had a big bad storm come through with like naders and all kind of stuff. So I skipped a couple days and then went back with a mice wash kit. In each yard, I had one with a 28, one with a 32, and then one with a 31, 30, 31. So I was like, there were a few obscenities I can't say on the internet. Shouted, and the mite wash kiss was pitched into the woods. So knowing that, I called Bob as soon as I got service, and I was like, man. I was like, he was like, man, just breathe. It's okay. And I was like, what do I do? And he's like, well, you need to get them knocked back with whatever you can get them knocked back with. So I did, I did another round of treatments, and that got them saved. I did a round of that. And then I started smacking them with oxalic immediately, even with brood, just trying to get the phoretics down, trying to get some kind of control on these bad boys. So after I finally got done losing, I think I was sitting at like 80. So yeah, that sounds about right. I think I lost about 40 outright.
Yeah.
And this was not like over a month or two. This was like went to feed, came back, and they were dead, like kind of mite problem. So like maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. It was probably a week because I was feeding a little thinner syrup going into the fall. And then I started thickening it up a little bit. After that, trying to keep, getting what yards were light. Some yards weren't even light because they robbed out each other so much. They basically filled up for the wintertime. So that was a plus. That saved me a little bit on my feed bill. But
right.
Got to look at it.
There's always a silver lining in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But anyway, so after that, I think I gave them 2 rounds of oxalic, and Bob said, I consulted with Bob after my first round of oxalic, and he said he was considering going to Unadilla, and he's like, you need to go south. That'll help those bees. That pollen will help them get back healthy. You can oxalic them, the whole 9.
Yeah.
And as we were considering going to Unadilla, Bob got a call from a friend of his, and he said, "Hey, if Seth needs a bee yard, he's more than welcome to come down here. I'll unload him. We can put him on pallets, the
Oh
whole
man.
nine." He just really, for real, came in, put the shield down, all the
Saved your
bullets that
bacon.
were coming in. I came out on top.
Wow.
So Bob was gracious enough to lend me some 4-way pallets. And so we put them on. I got them all. Took me a couple nights, but I got them moved to 4-way pallets. We hauled them south. I think I hauled 72 south. And that's how I ended up with 65. I lost a few more while I was down there. They were still pretty small. Some
Yeah.
of them were barely 2 frames of bees when they went down there. And so here we are at 65-ish. I've got a few, I think I've got around 65 south, and then I've got a yard back to the north that I just didn't take south because they were fairly clean. So I just gave them a bunch of oxalic, and they were all double deeps. So I didn't feel like transferring those over by hand. They were heavy. They were good. I just let them ride.
There's kind of a lesson learned here. I'm gonna maybe speak more to my experience here, but I've got a feeling yours probably mirrors it, and I can say it because we're both the type of fellas who we bite off more than we can chew, and somehow find a way to eat it cold. Year
buddy.
after year, we try to take smaller bites. We get warmer bites, and once you appreciate that smaller, warmer bite, you're thinking, you knucklehead. Let me think through this before I do the same thing again year after year after year. And there's of course there's the Einstein quote that we've all said a million times, but to do the same thing expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. Somehow, as beekeepers, we get in this weird loop where we can only process so much of this goals and dreams and desires and all this passion, and sometimes the passion and desire to grow and to build and to do and to get up to that next step, sometimes it comes with great sacrifice. A lot of that has to do, I think, with time management, and also being realistic with the situation and the health of our colonies. So I'm not picking on your experience here. I can pick on my own, that the situation that you're talking about there. When those bees start crashing, from mite loads, it does take a little bit more time than we want to acknowledge. They actually have to go through. They have to have the mites there present. Those viral loads have to be expressed, and then those next round of bees coming through. There's a significant amount of time that it does take. And that's the hard part to accept, because I want to believe that sometimes these things just happened overnight. And then you can get high mite loads happen really quick. When your bees are out foraging, sit colonies are maybe out foraging yours, vice versa. There's a lot of different ways. And a lot of these things, unfortunately, we've talked with Dr. Humberto, Dr. Peck. We've tried to get into this. Where do the bees, where do they actually get into the mites? How do they bring them back? What does it look like? What is actually being transmitted? And how long does it take before we start to see any kind of decline? Unfortunately, there is a lot of gray areas here where we don't fully understand all those things. But the reason I bring that up, Seth, is I can know from my own experience, we're so dedicated on building the beast that we don't have the bandwidth. That's probably the easiest way to say it. We don't have the bandwidth to process all of the functions that need to be executed to make that beast healthy. And so we grow them out, we put them out there in those yards, and something happens. They start to get those viral loads being expressed. And the next thing you know, they start dwindling and dwindling. And then it all of a sudden seems like in 1 week's time, they've gone from, I don't know what their mite loads are, to absolutely crashing. As you've worked with Bob, with Bob's integrated pest management, the oxalic acid and Apivar, Apigard, all the things that you guys are doing there. Where do you draw the line on, okay, I'm working with Bob, and here's what we're doing in Bob's yards, and then here's what I'm doing in Seth's yards? Where do you draw the line there on and being okay with diverting from the course a little bit, or do you?
Every once in a while, I kind of am like, I'm gonna pass. It's usually along the lines of oxalic acid. I personally have a ProVap 110. That's what I use for oxalic vaporization. It's reliable. They work. They are expensive, but in my book, you get what you pay for. But anyway, the only thing I do a little bit differently is I probably venture out on the, I don't know if you've seen the video or not, where you put the rag in the front, you use the little stick to go in and all this, that, and the other. I pack a lot of OA in. I pack that thing till it won't hold anymore, flip the cap over and stick it in there and let it ride. I not necessarily trying to skip important details. I'm not sure that it makes that big of a difference. Personally, that's just me. I see not necessarily the same kills, but pretty close. And for me being smaller, you know, one extra round of oxalic acid for, 150 colonies versus an extra round for 2,000 colonies, there's a big difference there. So I can afford certain liberties, so to speak, with certain stuff that Bob just can't. I mean, I get it. He's paying 4 people to run around vaporize, or 2 people to run around and vaporize, whereas I'm paying myself my time to take care of my bees, to make sure I've got assets, living and breathing and healthy and mite free, so to speak. That's really the only thing I do a little different as far as IPM. Most everything else is pretty much by the book. Every once in a while, like, obviously with Apagard, if I don't do it the same week Bob does, I just have to watch the temperature and stuff like that. So it's really just, I don't do anything outlandishly, like I don't treat or this yard got skipped or nothing like that. I try to integrate some of the same, but, just, it's kind of a different scale type of deal. Like I can do mine just a little different because I don't have quite as many colonies to manage.
You can find that sweet spot where you're balancing out your scale, your context, your goals. A lot of the things, and the reason I bring that up, Seth, is we're big fans of oxalic acid too. One of the game changers for us was moving from the corded units to the INSTANTVAP, where we can just go through and just blast them on with DeWalt batteries, and it gets done. The trouble that we had is there's all these options out here for mites, and not fully understanding what each product, what the true potential is, where there are some challenges. Every product. I think Bruce is on here listening tonight. Bruce just did a great interview with Tom Nolan of Nod Apiaries. They had a great talk about Formic Pro, for instance. Where it's gold, where it has limitations, and what to think about. A lot of that information, whether it's Formic Pro, whether we're using Apagard, or even oxalic acid, or Apivar is a great one too. There's nuance to all these things, and as we try to figure out what the nuance is and how these treatments apply to our beekeeping, unfortunately, it's like if we don't put the treatments on, our bees are dead, and if we put the treatments on wrong, our bees are dead because either the treatments are too strong or they're too light.
Yep.
You get wild cards in there, and it absolutely breaks your heart. But we learn a lot from guys like Bob. When Bob is solid, Bob, he's got great winter survival. He's doing a lot of things right. And when he banks on a certain product, and then there's massive failure, and you're thinking, what in the world's going on? And it turns out that it's very likely was concentrations within the product itself. And everyone starts having the same trouble with that. It's challenging when we start leaning on specific treatments or programs to keep our bees clean, but that's what it takes. When Bob's out treating, I mean, if we just talk about Bob, just the Walmart yard alone, financially, what it costs to treat the Walmart yard with Apagard or Formic Pro, it gets to be expensive.
Oh, of course.
What I want to bring into the conversation here, Seth, is as we are growing our bee yards, we are trying to balance out what is our cash flow right now as we're in the beekeeping season, to actually provide the things that we need for our bees, to get them into a strong colony that can winter. How do we balance that with sometimes maybe just flying by the seat of our pants, maybe sometimes a little bit too much, how do you find the balance at your scale, trying to cash flow your operation?
A lot of that comes with that gift of the foresight. Like, well, and not necessarily like I say predicting, but I like to set the first thing I like to do, and I think that's what every beekeeper likes to do. They like to maybe want to guesstimate what they're going to be at the end of the year. If you want to grow, if you want to maintain, if you want to go down, do you want to sell a bunch? Do you want to donate a bunch? I don't know. I'm looking to grow massively, and I would like to be at 300, but I would be happy with like 225, 250. One thing I've learned in this industry and just in life in general, if you shoot for the stars and you land on the moon, you still landed on the freaking moon. Okay. Yeah. You
That's
know what I
right.
mean? So, if you shoot, make a long shot, you're still going to get out there and you're still going to hit targets that nobody else is hitting.
Right.
But at any rate, so, the first thing I like to do is establish what kind of goal I'm going to be at and what I need to do to get there. Primary goal is how many colonies I want to be at the end of the year. The cash flow for me right now comes in at singles and queens. That's my easiest and most, somewhat guaranteed income. Honey is a bonus check. Another thing I like to say is Mother Nature's the house and she always wins.
That's
You
right.
just get to be fortunate enough to pick red 21 or black 8 or whatever. I don't know how that works. My
It
point
sounds like you
is,
do. It's smart. Good for you.
you run the gamble,
Uh-huh.
and if you make good on it, that's awesome. But if you're a real gambler and you start hitting bottom and bottom and bottom and bottom and bottom, you're going to be looking at starting from rock bottom, which I can't afford to
You-
go there just yet. So
So how do you, so right now, a lot of folks who are listening tonight are, they're at, we could have a brand new beekeeper. We could have a backyard
right,
peeper that's aspiring to get to 10 or 20 colonies, a sideliner who is trying to turn their beekeeping operation into something that does cash flow, that's maybe profitable, at least pays for itself. But if it's a sideline, then we're going to treat it like a business.
of course,
And they're working full time elsewhere, and they're working
yeah,
bees on the side. It's
absolutely.
similar to what your relationship is with Bob. You're working for
Oh yeah,
Bob full time, and then your side job is beekeeping. Um, I got a lot of questions that I think a lot of folks are interested to hear on that, and
all
there
right.
might not be any solid answers, for that,
Probably
but
not with me.
well, it's the experience I think that we all share. It's when we're talking about allocating the time and the
Mm,
funds for the sideline bee operation, while at the same time maintaining our responsibilities on the full time job.
right,
How much do you let the full time? At some point, we cross over, and the
of
sideline
course,
operation starts to pay for itself, and at least it's breaking even, and
yes.
then we realize, okay, it can actually stand alone at this scale. And then we have to decide, where do we start funneling in money and time into this? Where does that come from? Are we taking time and money from our full-time job and funneling that into the bee business? Do we somehow grow the bee business in and of itself slowly enough that we can return all those assets back into the business, fold those back in, and then just grow itself? When you're growing from 65 colonies to 300 colonies, that's a heck of a lot of queens to make, to be able to cash
Yes.
flow the boxes and the boards and the
Oh,
frames
of
and the
course.
feed.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about how you have how either you have or you continue to try to find that time and financial balance, working full time for Bob, but also working and building the sideline bee business.
So I have to remind myself of this sometimes, but Bob is priority number one. He is my full time job and he pays my full time paycheck. But I also have to remember that if I want to grow, I'm going to have to make sacrifices. So if I need to ask for a day off, so that I can do bees or I can make the honey pouring tank or I can make the candles to go to the market with on the weekend, I need to do that so I can kind of, it's not necessarily that I work X amount of number of hours on the clock. I work to make sure that I keep just some kind of money trickling in with Bob. And then, while when I go home, I bust ass. I don't play around.
Yep.
I really try to get it going when I get home. And as far as like cash flow and equipment, like I say, the bees has been the biggest amount of cash flow for me. If you can sell bees, which people want bees, like, I don't know why or how, but there's always a demand for bees. It's just a matter of letting people know that you have them. That's the biggest issue. I don't have that, fortunately, thanks to all of my friends in the YouTube community.
You have
sold
friends in
all the
high places, you could say.
Heck yeah, absolutely. And even if you don't, there's avenues to do that.
Right.
Like the state of Georgia has the farmers market bulletin. I don't know if other states have that or not. That's an avenue. You could put up ads in the Bee Journal for stuff like that. It's expensive, but the Bee Journal has, I don't know how many, probably hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So that, it's kind of just figuring out how to get your stuff out, and then you can start generating cash flow. So maybe to answer that question directly, because I'm terrible at this, I will talk about space quantum theory when you ask me about a beekeeping question.
My
if you
guy.
let me get into it. But you might keep on the low end until you can figure out how to get your product around. And, once you start getting a customer base, then you can really start making those jumps, 20 to 40, 5 to 40, 5 to 20. It doesn't matter if you have 4,000 colonies that you're trying to sell if nobody knows you have them to sell. That's just, it's like the shelf in Walmart nobody can reach for the one thing everybody wants. It's like that, people are going to ask the manager to get up there and get it. But if they don't know what's up there, they're not going to worry about it. They're going to go find something else.
Do you find that there's a lot, obviously, working with Bob, your full-time job, like most sideliners, that's the number one thing.
Right.
You can only sacrifice that to a very, to an
Oh,
extent
yeah.
where
Yeah.
you're not jeopardizing that relationship or that opportunity in attempt to try to grow another opportunity. You really have to be able to look at the sideline opportunity and say, hey, okay,
Right.
here's where I'm at. Okay, if I'm able to invest this much X time or this much X money, then
Yeah.
the yield could look like this. And you got to be extremely
course.
realistic with that and not
Oh,
just
yeah.
say, well, all
Oh,
I
yeah.
need to do is take 2 days off from my main gig and spend 2 days
Yeah.
working the bees. If you don't have that experience to know how to best spend that time, what those yields could look like. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of sideliners, they will still get into a cycle, whether it's mental or physical, but we have to fund the bee business one way or the other. Either we have to bring in time and capital from the outside and bring that in, or
Yeah.
we have to grow the sideline business at a rate to where it grows in and of itself, and we fold it back in and keep moving forward. Seth, as you've grown, you went to 150, you said last year, you're at 65 good-looking colonies right now. You're able to occasionally take a day off from Bob and then invest that time into the sideline business. So it sounds like you're comfortable taking time from one to give to the other. How comfortable are you taking capital from one to the other?
As comfortable as walking into some stranger's house and grabbing a drink out of the fridge sometimes. And then other times it's like, well, the way I look at it, and it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but if I need something, I get it.
Yep.
I don't worry about it. I don't debate 2 or 3 days. If I need something, eventually in my mind, and this is not necessarily a good thing, this is actually more of a fault, I envision a return out of that somehow. And that don't always happen, but when it does, you've got cash flow and revenue coming back in, so you can reinvest it or, invest it in something else or fix the car or put tires on the girlfriend's car or whatever. So capital time investment is, I have nothing but time with the bees. The bees are my second life and job. As far as capital goes, you know, I don't have a whole lot of extra money, obviously. Generally when I get it, had a guy tell me the other day, you know, it's hand to mouth. As soon as we get it, you know, it's going back out to pay bills or, you know, all this, that, and the other. And, and I'm pretty good about picking, you know, like my woodenware and stuff. I can pick that out pretty cheap. My most expensive woodenware is probably my frames. That's probably my most expensive, you know, as far as boxes goes. I dig around in the dumpster. I find old wood, cut it up and put frame rests in it and all this, that, and the other. I'm pretty good with woodworking equipment. If you're looking to get, you know, that kind of capital cheap, I highly recommend putting the capital into like a table saw or a cutoff saw, something that can make expensive stuff is worth the money to invest in.
Yep.
Is, you know, the way I like to look at it.
Those are solid points. And I think a lot of folks are right there in that same, you know, uncomfortable position. And I appreciate that you brought it up, because a lot of us, myself included, we have spent, when you're growing anything, you know, we all have a different level that we are able to accept risk at. And some of the risk, we know that we are going to be not only hand to mouth, but there might be a day or two in between where we're not eating. And what do we do then?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So a lot of us go hungry through a lot of these growth spells, and that's what it takes. That's just part of the sacrifice. That's not a pat on the back. That's not to say somehow we're doing things better. But when you have that call in your heart, and you can see that there's a path laid out in front of you, and you feel like it's the universe or it's God is a part of this thing too, you have a certain due diligence to keep stepping forward, keep walking through those doors, and be mindful at all times. Give everything thought, you know, make sure that we're staying in tune with all that as we grow. And I think a lot of the growth comes from those times when we were really, really hungry, you know. Back, a lot of folks, you know, they do it now, but the fasting and meditating, fasting and praying, when there's something about going hungry that really gets you thinking up here, and it can really get you in tune here. And that's a lot of beekeeping. A lot of beekeeping is fasting and praying to God, somehow make this thing work, keep it all together. And I hope the wheels don't fall off on this downhill ride.
Buddy.
That's what it is.
Oh yeah.
Seth, as you are obviously intimately aware of that, as you grow,
right?
Your sideline business, you talked about you want to start to get to that 300 range, and then it's going to grow and grow and grow. You're finding ways to cash flow, time flow, where you can keep that healthy balance as you've kind of developed your own method. Of course, you've have paid your dues at your tuition at the School of Hard Knocks, I'm sure. But you've also had a lot of amazing educational opportunities working with Bob. As you are growing, what do you think some of your greatest limiting factors are right now on you going from 65 to, let's say, 300?
So my biggest limiting factors, I think, as per Liebig's law, the number one limiting factor is obviously money. I think that's every sideline beekeeper's limiting factor. Yeah. Number two is good equipment, good truck. My truck's not bad, but it's not really got enough rear end in it to do what I need it to do. And then, you know, as far as that goes, that's really my only limiting factors. Probably money, truck, and then, honestly, my other limiting factor, and this kind of goes into the honey thing, is I don't have a lot of sourwood locations. Oddly enough, all my beehives are kind of like, I don't know if I can do this on the screen, but if, you know, this is Bob's area right here, all my beehives are kind of on the outer rim in the south and a little bit to the north right here. But even that is lower elevation, so it's not really a great sourwood spot. If I could get into that range and make a little bit of that, that would probably propel me a little further. So that's another one of my limiting factors is not necessarily having, I mean, we'll make good spring honey, don't get me wrong, but having that high dollar liquid in the jar is big time. And that's the one everybody wants, man. They will not ask for the local. They will not ask for the special flavors. They will not ask for the wildflower. They want the sourwood. And if you don't got it, then they ask for local. But otherwise, that, you know.
Sourwood first.
Yep. Yes, sir. Yep.
As you you're thinking about sourwood, you're thinking about the extra capital it creates, and it can cash flow, you know, your late spring, early summer season as you kind of go into the fall and start to build and you start to grow. What do you think some of your leverage points have been, not only in the past but this year? What are some solid leverage points that you think are really helping create that extra force out in your yards?
So my ability with a grafting tool.
Nice. Yeah.
That is definitely one of my strong suits. That and my ability to not care if it's dark, sleet, snow, rain, you know. What does he say? He says it in I quote movies a lot. It's Rambo. He's talking to the colonel in the tent. He says he's been trained to ignore pain, to ignore weather. I'm not pain. I'm working on weather. Doesn't bother me a bit. If it's dark, I got 10 colonies left. I'll put a flashlight on my veil and go rocking. As long as it's not slap pouring the rain and it's like detrimental to the beehives, you know, I'm working. So having a wee bit of brawn will assist you in the bee world for sure. Not necessarily being tough, but just having, I guess, a sense of I need to get this done. And if, as long as it's not going to be harmful to my bees, I can do it, you know. That's definitely one of, I guess you would call that a force multiplier, I guess.
That was going to be my next question. To quote, you're quoting like, you know, really heavy philosophical things like Rambo, and I'm struggling here to think how do I say something smarter than that? And I can only think of one thing, and to quote a bumper sticker, real beekeepers do it in the rain, right, Seth?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
That's one of Seth's golden sayings on a bumper sticker there. But that's a fact.
It's on a coffee mug now too.
Oh, look at you, man.
I know. I'm coming up in the world.
Iron and frog hair split 3 ways. Look at you. You know, I think one of the cool things that you're talking about there is, you know, when we interviewed Bob, I think he brought it up then a couple years back, and we all know Bob enough. You especially know Bob. There is a certain fire in the eyes. There's a grit in the gut, but there's also a tenacious spirit. There's something to say about tenacity that no matter what is going on, you are digging in, you are pushing through, you're going to make it happen. Even knowing that sometimes you might take a loss or you're going to bleed or you might lose some teeth. You're still going in that fight knowing that you will come through on the other side one way or the other. And I think it does take a lot of that to be successful, not only at, you know, 20 or 30 colonies, but 200, 300, 400. And I think these are all lessons that we learn at this sideline scale, growing into commercial, with the hope and the dream that we can be a Bob Binnie or we can be a Chris Werner, and we can be operating at that level of success, which is just amazing to think about, that someday we might be right there. And it all is because of guys like Bob and Chris who take time to pass the torch, to be the lighthouse, to do those things. And so it's an amazing opportunity to not only just check out Bob's videos, but to work with Bob. But one thing I love about Bob, and I don't know that I've ever got the chance to really say it, but one of the first things that blew me away about Bob, it was who Bob was as a person. The type of crew that Bob has, the folks that he has working with him, he gives folks beautiful opportunities there. And he's just there being Bob, just gracious, loving, kind. Yeah, there's work to do, and here's how we're staying on track. But he's given a lot of folks some opportunities that maybe they wouldn't have found in other places, and in doing so, they have grown and blossomed, and just it was like it's just a huge point in their personal growth too. And I think it's awesome to have folks like you, Seth, learning with Bob. You're going to do the same thing. Whether you know it or not, you will be that lighthouse. You are a lighthouse to folks, sharing what you're doing. If you're listening tonight on the Nature's Image Farm podcast, if you're listening to us live tonight on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel, or you're checking out the replay, be sure to check out Seth's brand new YouTube channel at the Appalachian Bee Ranch, where you can follow all things Seth. You can follow him along as he goes from 65 to 3 million colonies, bootstrapping it, selling frog legs on the side, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
You know, $20 is $20. He's got to do what's necessary to keep these things moving. And I love that about you, Seth, because you've got that spirit about you, that pioneering spirit when it comes to raising bees, and that's what it takes. Seth, as we've talked about some limiting factors, some leverage points, and you just hinted at it there a minute ago. There's a lot of things that we stumble across, we learn, or we find the hard way in growing our business or growing our bees, where 1 and 1 equals 3. And on the farm, we call those things force multipliers. It might be a skid steer. It might be a flatbed truck. It might be a certain thing that all of a sudden catapults you to a whole nother level where you're operating at a place where you couldn't even imagine that before. What has been some force multipliers for you as you've grown to 65 and then 150, and then as you're growing back up to that 200 or 300? What's some force multipliers for Seth Hill at the Appalachian Bee Ranch?
So far, a FlowJet 4.9 gallon feed pump. That is my number one force multiplier. 5 gallon jugs suck. I cannot say that enough.
Yeah.
Get a feed pump. It'll change your life. The second force multiplier is if you can't afford the fancy 2026 Ram flatbed with, dang heated air cooled
Bob's got nice trucks, doesn't he?
Oh, man. Oh, I'm so spoiled. Oh, those, I jump in my truck to go work bees, and I debate on whether or not just to ask Bob to borrow one of his trucks.
his flatbeds on his trucks are worth more than most people's trucks.
Oh, dude. It's probably worth more than my truck, for sure. But my force multiplier, being the size that I am, is a 5x12 trailer. A trailer, some kind of trailer. If you're running out of just a pickup truck, even get like a small, I don't know, what's the smallest trailer they make, like a 5x8 or something?
Yeah, or
something like that.
6x8.
Yeah, even like a small trailer will change your life. I got a good deal on a 5x12. I don't know if we have time for stories or not, but I might.
Of course we do.
So, okay, here's the story of how I got my very first trailer. My dad gave me the proposition. Actually, my dad brought me back a metric ton of rock coal when he went to go pick up a trailer. So This is how I got my trailer. It was pretty cool. Yeah, I thought that was neat. I used to be a blacksmith, so I kind of like that stuff. I got coal for Christmas. But anyway, off the subject. So he said, but you're going to help me load up the scrap metal and you're going to get the trailer. And I said, what trailer? He's like, the trailer under the scrap metal pile. I'm like, what? Now, mind you, just envision there's a 5x12 trailer hidden under this pile of scrap metal. That's how big this pile of scrap metal is.
That's a stout trailer.
Yeah, it's a pretty all right little dude. But so we start digging, we start moving stuff, and I see the tongue, and then I see the tire, and then I can start seeing the gate, and I can actually see the bed, and I'm like, holy crap, there's actually a trailer under here. I'm thoroughly shocked. But anyway, so when I got the trailer, it had one tire, no lights, the jack was busted, the tongue was froze up, so it was a piece of junk. It deserved to go on the scrap metal. But I have done so much work on that trailer. It's not even funny. I wouldn't trade it for a brand new trailer off the lot, even to upgrade, sell, and get an even nicer deal. I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world. But, it's stuff like that, not necessarily go out and buy a new one, but, look around the neighborhood or, check around with your friends and see if somebody's got an old piece of crap. You can put a few hours in, put a tire on and get it moving, That's how I've found a lot of my come ups is it was garbage that I fixed up and, made it just good enough to ride with. And I'm still running with it. Like I say, my feed rig is that way. I was doing it out of 55-gallon drums. But now I've pretty much moved up to a tote. I just strapped the tote in the back of the truck. I'm going to have to modify my truck bed before long because I'm actually not damaging it, but I'm stressing it out pretty good, strapping a full tote in the back and slamming on the brakes and not like locking it up, but somebody
That's
pulls
over
out in front of you and
2,000 pounds
making
full. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what 1-to-1 is. I think it's like 2780 something. It's up there. It's heavy.
Yeah.
And so you're strapping a full tote in the back of a pickup truck bed. It's going to stress it out. I'm going to put a YouTube video up on that on how I'm going to modify it.
Nice.
And I got to get some capital to get the metal first. So we'll see. It's coming. I just don't know when. But anyway, so, little stuff like that. It's not necessarily big force multipliers, but any little thing you can acquire to make yourself faster,
boom,
will pay off down the road. If you can move 10 colonies instead of 5, you can move 10 colonies, fill up a yard in 2 trips instead of 4. If you're doing a 20 colony yard or whatever you want to do. If you can feed 200 colonies instead of 2, you've just made yourself faster. And it seems like a big, really not an easy something to take. It's not an easy blow to take at first. But once you start using it and once you see how easy it is after you've made yourself faster and how much more you can do after you are faster, it's a satisfying and, it's a good feeling knowing you can make yourself money off of being fast. So that's the way I like to look at it.
That's a big deal. We can't make any more time. But we can find ways where these things that are making us money take less time to do. And sometimes it does take a capital investment in either a scrap pile and then couple that with time, or buying that piece of equipment or a gear that is saving us a tremendous amount of time. And the beautiful thing about whether it's a flatbed truck, or it's a trailer, or it's a tractor with forks or a skid steer, those things are going to be there for you to continually use, to continue to save those times over and over and over again. And now I don't even know, I'm sure the same thing with you. If you look at, this is probably, don't want to go down this rabbit hole here, but there's all this conversation of, if anyone watches any, if Seth, you're a fellow hillbilly, so I guarantee you probably have. A lot of us will check out those apocalyptic doomsday things, right? And so the day after an event is like, day 0 is the event, and then it's day 1, right? Yeah. Okay. I've never been in a day 1 situation and looked back and said, man, I wish, I really didn't need that flatbed truck, or I didn't need that diesel, or I really didn't. Like, you almost wonder, what in the world? I wish I would have done this sooner. And so for a lot of the metrics sometimes is you have to learn to be smart with your money. But a lot of these things, when you make these big leaps on a lot of these things, to invest in that, it's almost, it was the right move when immediately you were like, it's not that, oh, wow, this is a great radio inside of it. No, it's, oh my God, I can carry 2 totes of Pro Suite on the back, and I can put,
yes, sir,
how many 64 colonies on top of here? Easy. Like, it starts to thinking, I can't believe I didn't do that sooner. But we have to, it's there's so many really sappy quotes about, life's about the journey, not destination. And as sappy as it is, it's true. A lot, you don't just arrive at figuring these things out. A lot of folks are looking for shortcuts to being successful. And there aren't any. There are shortcuts to finding success. Like, you might find a shortcut to save a little bit of time feeding or doing this.
Yeah.
All those things coupled together is what makes somebody successful. And unfortunately, there are no shortcuts. No. And Seth, what I appreciate about tonight's conversation is, here is Seth Hill of the Appalachian Bee Ranch. You're just down in south of Clayton.
Yep.
You're working with Bob. You know, you're with Bob every day, and yet somehow you're still a knucklehead like the rest of us. I mean that in a loving way. You're still out there making mistakes. You're still out there murdering bees. You're still out there digging in the blood and the mud and the guts, and you're doing it. It's as silly as that sounds, it is incredibly encouraging knowing that we are all going to make these mistakes. It's what we do, how we learn from that, how we utilize that information that makes all the difference in the world. And that's an amazing amazing opportunity. I want to give folks an opportunity. If you have a couple questions, we're getting on here a little over an hour, and so we don't want to go on tonight, but I want to open it up for a couple questions for folks. If you have a question for Seth, type it out, put the word question, followed by your question, and we'll be able to easy see through here. The comments are just blasting so fast, I can't really keep up, but question, and then your question, and we'll see old Seth Hill here, what he has to say about that. Seth, what's the rest of this year looking like for you right now? What are you most excited about?
Oh, man. What I'm most excited about? Man, bringing my bees home. I am tired of going 5 hour and 5 hour coming to and from. I love seeing Jeff. He's a great friend of mine. We've grown real close over this past few weeks of me going to and from. But man, I don't like driving. That's like my worst thing. I hate to drive. Cab time is like my bane of existence. I don't mind listening to some good YouTube and, you know, hanging out and doing all that, but I don't know. Time behind the wheel to me is just like, I mean, I know I got to do it to make the bees continue, but I'm ready to be back in my own bee yards, be running and gunning late at night and hanging out and sweating and having a good time. Ready for spring to get here.
A lot of your time is spent saying, "Hey, Hyra," you're ready to say bye, Hyra, and get back up north.
Yeah, buddy.
Get those bees going, huh?
I've seen Hyra enough this year.
You're good. We got a question here, Seth. This is from I got to thank my buddy Brian Coper is in the background moderating, helping to keep things running smooth. So Brian, thanks for all that. Brian has a question for you, Seth. Seth, what one memory stands out in your beekeeping journey? The most memorable one.
Oh, man. Man, I don't know, because there's hundreds of thousands of those. Man, the most memorable, and it's not a pleasant one, is when I was driving my truck and the steering wheel did a full 360 and the wheels didn't move. So I had to, with a trailer load of bees in tow.
That's a meet Jesus moment. Good.
Lord. That was I'm about ready to march right up to heaven moment. That's what that was. But that's probably my most memorable thus far. That was the most severe breakdown ever in my history of driving.
You got to talk to us about how'd you work through that one?
Oh man, so that was a crapshoot all the way around. The little red trailer, we're gonna call it the little red trailer. I feel like that's gonna be a famous thing on YouTube now. But the little red trailer was hauling way too much. I had the axle overloaded and all this, that, and the other. And I was trying to go up a power line road to one of my new bee yards and drop off some NUCS. Well, I got about halfway up and spun out. I was in two-wheel dig. I just about made it. If I would have planned the drive out a little better, I probably would have got up there. But at any rate, so I backed down a little bit, put it in four-wheel dig, and try to get it at it again. And I hear a ding, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. I've never heard that sound before.
Uh-oh.
And I backed down and tried to do it again, and then I heard boom, and then the truck kind of set down a little bit, and then the wheel went. I was like, oh no.
Oh man.
So needless to say, I got out and the neighborhood called in a few noise complaints. But so I got out and tried to investigate the damage, and one tie rod was touching the ground and the other one fell into the wheel and scratched up the rim a little bit on the inside. So needless to say, she wasn't moving. So my first thought is it's midnight. I got to get these bees up to the bee yard. Now, the bee yard, mind you, is probably a good 200 yards away, straight uphill. And these colonies are well fed at this point. They're not light.
Oh,
They're big nukes. They're not little nukes. They're heavy. So I got about 9 before I had to stop and just be like, no, I'm done. I'm not towing anymore. It's done. It's over. So I unloaded them all right there beside the little gravel road. I went back the next day. I had the guy that let the landowner, I'm good buddies with him. So I walked up to his house, and he goes to work at like 3 o'clock. He works at a Caterpillar plant over in South Carolina. So he gets up really, really early. And so I hitched a ride home with him. Got like 2 hours of sleep. I was a mess. I was distraught. Got home, got some sleep, borrowed my grandma's car, and grabbed whatever tools I could seem to muster and to try to go fix this mess.
oh man.
So I unhooked the trailer, and my dad called me, and he said, "Hey man, did you break down over at such and such's house?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh,
He was
no.
like, are you going to tow it? And I'm like, "No." So he's like, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't do anything until I get there." So we get there, we assess the damage. He helps me get the trailer off and parked. And then he calls me in a tow truck, and he's like, "Look, I'll pay for the tow if you'll pay for whatever's messed up with it." That was not the exact words used, but that's the most kid-friendly paraphrased I can, because he didn't believe me that the tie rods had snapped. He's like, "Man, you don't know what you're looking at. You know what you'd have had to done to snap both tie rods?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm looking at it. I'm telling you right now, it's
Mhm.
both the tie rods." But anyway, so after Bob let me borrow a truck to get the bees moved. So I guess word to the wise, don't try to do too much. Don't overdo the capabilities of your physical equipment. Let me
Mm.
rephrase that, because obviously I say shoot for the stars and land on the moon. But, there's a fine line of doing that. And then there's a fine line of absolutely throwing a turd in the punch bowl at your party,
Uh-huh.
so to speak.
Mhm.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's a great great point, because how many times are we absolutely just pushing it? We're on thin ice. We
oh
are,
man,
what in the world? Sometimes, to be fair, we don't know,
to be fair.
how far we can push something. A lot of times we do, and we're
Yeah.
just knuckleheads.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we got a question here
Ah,
for you.
okay.
Seth, let's see here. From our buddy Todd Prater at the Loma Vista Bee Company up in California. The question is, what is one thing you would change in your operation
Oh,
versus Bob's?
man. One thing I would change.
Or maybe what is one thing that you do differently than Bob? Not because what Bob does isn't a good way to do it, but something
Right.
that suits your personality or your goals.
Man, I don't know, because his stuff always works.
I know. It's like, why would
It's
you do
like,
anything different? Yeah.
I'm sure I do a few things different. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody works the same. I don't know, man. That's a hard one. That's tough, because I directly pretty much follow my teacher on most things. I really just can't think of that off the top of my head. I guess if I would change one thing, crap, man, I don't know. That's tough. That's a
Well, I
tough
think you
one.
mentioned earlier that you do maybe a couple extra oxalic treatments. You do some
Oh,
things
yes,
that
yes,
you
yes.
can afford.
Okay,
You
that's a
have
good one.
you
Yeah,
have the little bit of
yeah.
extra time to put into something, so
And
you have the
another
liberty to do it.
thing is Bob doesn't use formic, and I'm going to look into that. So that would be one thing I do different. I'm going to employ some formic. Bob is at a level of his beekeeping that he has so finely tuned the schedule that he knows when this is happening. And if this is going to happen, this can happen. So he's going to do this instead.
Right. Yep.
I don't have that gift of foresight yet. So I'm still in the phase of making the new mistakes. Not that Formic's a mistake. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, he got burned a while back. It wasn't Formic Pro. It was the chemical was Formic. I forget what it was called, but he cooked 300 colonies from improper use of Formics. He gave them a full dose when it was like 95 degrees and way too hot, way too much Formic. So he destroyed them. And I guess his PTSD will not let him go
Once
back to Formic.
bitten, twice shy on something like that.
Which is completely understandable, because that would be like me cooking all 300 of my envisioned colonies this fall with Formic. That would be the exact same thing. And that would be a major, like that would, I'm not saying I would be done, but I would, that would be one of those humblers that's like,
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's an important thing, even when you're learning from a master like Bob. And Bob, if he does not, if you call him a master, he does not want praise. He does not want you to tell you how awesome that he is. But the fact of the matter is Bob is an amazing human being and teacher, and we learn a lot from him. And so just because if we do something different, I don't think it means that it's not that we oppose anything that he's doing. It might be that we're got maybe a little bit different context, so maybe some different goals, definitely different scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of things play into that. How much time or capital that we have, we might do some things a little bit different. And then eventually sometime, Seth, we might wise up and say, but Bob was definitely right on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just thought of it.
Okay, what is it?
The one thing I would do differently than Bob is if I was Bob, I would still be going to Unadilla.
Okay.
I'm sure after his 40 years on the road, he's tired of bed bug motels and all this, that, and the other. But this year is just too good to be true, man. And it could just be some whack environmental factor down there that got the pollen going and making stuff happen. But for me, I'm from now on until I reach probably Bob's status, I'm going to go south. I'm going to find a way to make it down there, get a yard, at least a yard, so I can get something started soon. But no, I would continue to go south. I wouldn't stop going south.
If you want to see a little bit more about that on this southern exposure, you can go check out Bob Binnie's YouTube channel. Check out the video, Go South, Young Man, and you'll see it's all about Seth and what he's doing down there in Hayhira. Be sure you tell Bob that we were talking him up here at Nature's Image Farm and sent you that way to check that video out. It's a great, you can just see Seth prime time, live action. That's the kind of thing that you're going to be able to expect.
Heck yeah.
Is Seth on his channel at the Appalachian Bee Ranch.
The only thing I would say, not to contradict you, but Bob is a master editor. I am not. So it's going to be a little bit of a different feel. It's going to be a little choppy at first. Y'all are just going to have to bear with me and ride this wave with me. And hopefully we'll get to where I can be as good of an editor as Bob.
I think your channel will kind of be like the John Wayne channel, where it's just roughed up and don't take no.
INSP. Wait a minute. Does it automatically bleep out obscenities?
What are you saying over there?
I like that. What? You got a soundboard over there, man?
No, of course not.
Oh, okay.
All right. We do have a question here, and I want to make sure we get this out.
Of course.
It's from Spring City Bee Farm. The question is, how many queens are you going to ship? Maybe the question is, we'll rephrase that, is Seth Hill, are you selling queens this year? And if so, how can folks get in touch with you so they too can have their very own Seth Hill queens this year?
So I was going to ask you about this after the live stream. People have been asking me, what's a more wise decision, to put up a video saying you can get in touch with me here and here, or to comment and say you can get in touch with me at such and such email address, or just to direct them to the, I know you can go to like about on a YouTube channel and then go to the, if you have questions, email, is there a way you can, like, from the creator point of view, hit a button and direct them to that, or do you have to comment?
What we do is we just direct folks directly to our website. If they want to contact us, they can go to contact us, and our email and number is there. They can reach us directly.
Sweet.
In the meantime, while you're building, your web presence and all those kind of things, what you can do is consider having a point of contact on your About Us on the Appalachian Bee Ranch channel.
Okay.
In the meantime, if you have a solid point of contact that you want folks to be able to reach at, shoot that to me afterwards. I'll put that into the description, and they can reach you directly, and then they can order queens from the one and only Seth Hill, or singles or NUCS or whatever Seth is, and that's
yep.
That's
so
awesome.
NUCS are probably going to be in my foreseeable future not available for another like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
The reason being is all my frames are new. I grow so fast. I have pretty much my oldest frames are probably out of some of the original NUCS I bought from Bob.
Right.
And that's it. Like all my old frames are not old anymore.
I think you mentioned you sold off some singles later in the year. So I guess depending on what your financial position is and what your growth is, if folks want more about that, I would say the best way is we'll leave his contact. We'll leave Seth's contact information in the description of this video. But more importantly, be sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell on Seth's Appalachian Bee Ranch YouTube channel. And when Seth has updates on queen availability, or if he's selling NUCS or singles, he can talk to you about that right there on the channel, and you guys can form that relationship there too. A couple more questions, Seth, and then we're going to cut you loose here for the night. But the question is, how do you get your comb drawn out fast enough to build up as fast as you want?
Sugar water, baby. Feed them suckers.
Feed.
When I first started beekeeping, feed was a no-no. That was how I don't want to talk about, certain subjects like if you do or don't do this, you're stupid.
Right.
But it.
We know what you're saying. We've all been there and done that.
It's like my sight was limited to think that the first thing I heard about beekeeping was true. And, the old school people didn't have to feed. The old school people weren't going from 65 colonies to 300. The old school people didn't have to worry about varroa mites, tracheal mites, all this, that, and the other business.
That's spot on.
So my greatest tool, aside from my willpower, is liquid feed. That is how I get most of my bees going, the way I get them going. And Bob's got a great video, several great videos on liquid feed, the ratios and what ratio to feed when. The easiest way to draw a comb is a slightly less than 1-to-1 ratio, more water than sugar. I don't know how to technically word that.
Less than a 1-to-1?
Less than 1-to-1, real thin sugar syrup, not like, water thin, but you want to be able to dip your finger in it and barely taste sugar. You want it to be a northern sweet tea. That's the best way I know how to put it.
Oh, that's great.
But anyway, so liquid feed is the best way to get that.
Your straw should sink in that glass of sweet tea and not float on top like it does down your way. Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Oh, we don't use straws, man.
That's a great, and that's an entire subject in itself.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
We definitely got to have you back on throughout the year and check in and see what you're up to, because there are so many nuances and variables with feeding. One quick story is when Bob and I, when we were down visiting the Werners, he was asking Pete about his totes of fructose 55 and what he thinned them down to. And Pete looked at him and said, "What do you mean thin them down?" And Bob said, "Well, you don't thin those down to feed to the bees?" And he goes, "No, we just feed it to them straight most of the time, truth be told." And Bob said, "Really?" And they do everything. And he says, "They do a good enough." And so what's interesting is I think there's ways to dial in approaches, and
of course,
there's I would absolutely love to have a crew that had Seth Hill on it. It had King John Land.
Oh yeah,
it had Jesse, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't worked with Selena yet, but you guys seem like
she's a joy.
The Blue Ridge All Stars. If I had a crew, I mean, we've got 7 kids. They've got to grow up a little bit, get a little bit older. But if I had a crew where they could just mix pallets of sugar into a huge bakery mixer and then make the liquid feed, maybe I would think about it. But a lot of us, as we grow, only thing we can do, the easiest thing to get feed out there is to feed straight right off a tote, whether it's Pro Sweet or 55, and just pump it to them and let them do their thing.
I have an easy solution to your problem, kind sir.
Okay.
Now that once again, this is a time thing. I made my own paddle for a drill to mix sugar water with in a 55-gallon drum. Now, you can do the same thing in a tote, but you have to have like a junk tote and cut the top out of it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then you got to have a pump to pump it out of that tote into the tote you want to put on the truck.
Yep.
But, you know, if you do a cost benefit analysis and you figure the cost of the feed versus the cost of the sugar, the hot water, additives, yada, 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 whatever, and the diesel fuel to drive and go get it and haul it back home or haul it to the bee yard, it may or may not come out in your favor. I don't know. I'm going to have a YouTube video on it because it's one of the only things I can do this time of the year besides going to Hey Hira when I'm at home and do a YouTube video on. But, you know, that might be, if I would think one of your kids could man a drill with a paddle bit while the other one pours the sugar in. Yeah.
I'm sure of it. But knowing them, they're going to take a 3-point tractor auger, and they're going to take the postal digger off there, and they're going to rig up some kind of a scuba diving gear. They're going to back right up and just make it do it itself. But that's the cool thing about beekeeping is, in my, you know, it could be naive, but to me, I'd like to say, you know, there's no right way or the wrong way. There's whatever way works for you and your bees and your context.
Yep.
And so whether that's using something like Pro Sweet, where it doesn't freeze, it doesn't sour, it doesn't go bad, and you can feed it to them on demand.
Yes.
That's, you know, that's pretty handy. But there's opportunities that's a benefit where it's not going to sour on you. It's not going to, you know, get your buckets black.
Exactly.
But, you know, to each their own. If I had the time even to thin out Pro Sweet,
of course,
at the price, you know, like this year, for instance, you know, we'll have the truck will come and then fill our totes. And so I don't do anything other than open up my caps, and then everything gets filled there. And then all I got to do is put it on the truck. You know, it does take a lot more pump, takes a lot longer. You are not pumping Pro Sweet at 50 degrees easily. It's got to be 70 degrees. It's so thick. You need a full 3-inch trash pump. So there's trade-offs, just like with anything.
That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. That is the one thing about sucrose. When it's thin, man, it's like, it's not quite water, but you know, it's thin. So you can run it.
It's cold. Wet and fast. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But once again, the semi truck rolling up, filling up totes sounds pretty sweet. That's pretty cool.
You know, and with the price of sugar and the price that ends up being at that volume, for us, it makes a lot of sense right now.
Right, of course. And you know, Bob gets a bulk deal, 51 cents a pound, but he buys it by the semi truckload. So,
exactly.
If you buy it by the pallet at Walmart, I don't know that you're quite going to get the same deal.
That's exactly the scalability of growing.
Right, of course, exactly. And the main appeal to sucrose is, you know, I forget all the chemistry, but they create their own antiseptic condition under the sucrose with the gluconic acid and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do they do that with Pro Sweet? Just a quick question. I don't know.
Well, it's an inverted sugar to start with. So some of those nuances there, what I do know is it's already inverted. So for me, when I'm putting, like, I can put Pro Sweet on, you know, in the winter, like right now when it's 50 degrees out, I can go flip me a bucket and they can feed off that a little bit during that day. And I can flip the bucket right back over before it gets too cold at night. So there's little nuances where I couldn't do that with a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1.
Oh, of course.
But this is, so it's already inverted too. So there's less metabolism. They don't have to break it down into that 2-chain format. Is it right? Is it wrong? Yes, it is.
Oh,
just like everything else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's just that has been one of our force multipliers. Is using that style of feed has just made things. It's saved us a lot of time, and
especially in your climate, that is a big deal up where you are. I guess I don't know. I've never been, but from the sounds of it, you know, that sounds like the ticket. Honestly, sounds like it's more profitable to use that than it is sucrose in your environment.
See. You know, maybe so. Unless you know, if we were buying enough dry sugar and could mix it fast enough. Right. And it's a matter of scale too, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, buying enough of it. Like if we just talk about a regular sideliner,
Oh, of
let's say
course.
60 to 100 colonies, buying enough sugar that they need at that scale, unless they're
Yeah,
getting it on a bulk buy with a commercial beekeeper, they're
absolutely.
automatically price pointing themselves in a position where, oh my gosh, it's already pretty expensive as it is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then the time to mix it, and then
Yep.
mixing up enough volume at one time to go feed the
Right.
bees before it sours in a week.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
a whole dance and nuance. That's beekeeping. That's how
Oh,
you make your
absolutely.
splits. That's how you're
Yep.
moving your comb around. You're getting your yards out onto a flow. It's all about
Absolutely.
and that little bit of nuance here. We had a question here from
Okay.
Dub McClellan. Greg, will you still be in Kentucky tomorrow? I will be. We'll be hitting the bricks tomorrow, and we'll be speaking down at the Clarks River Bee Club. So looking forward to seeing a lot of you down in Kentucky. That's going to be great down in the Benton, Kentucky area. There's a lot more speaking engagements this year. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website at naturesimagefarm.com. Check out the events, and maybe we'll be at a bee club near you. We'll take this last question here, Seth. It's from Brian Washburn, and it's a question to you both. What tree in your area blooms first? I'm in Southwest Ohio, and this year my maple trees are blooming right now. Last year my Bradford pears trees bloomed first, and my bees covered them up. Seth, what tree in your area blooms first?
Maple as per Lakemont. The first flower or plant to bloom south is wild radish. Latin's like Raphanus raffinistrum or something. I used to know that when I was in college. But anyway, it's like a mustard kind of.
Yeah.
That's the first thing to go down there, and it blooms forever. It's like 2 months, and they were still bringing in pollen off of it the other day. So there's a
Wow.
lot of it down there. Up here, the maples, they get a little bit off of like dandelion and stuff like that, but the maple is the first legitimate flow to really kick them into gear. That's our kind of indicator, and it actually came a week early this year. Usually they bloom on Valentine's Day to the south. They bloomed at the beginning of what's today? Yeah, last week they started blooming to the north. So something has gone funky somewhere. Mother Nature got her calendar mixed up or something. I don't know.
Well, what's interesting is I've talked about in the past, but when I came down and visited you guys and brought all those blue dot queens back and
Yeah.
cells and then singles from Bob to get those Southern Appalachian genetics mixed up here with our Northern Appalachian genetics, what's interesting is how similar a lot of the phenology is different. Like what time of year certain plants and things come on, but a lot of the same key points are kind of true. I think because you guys are so far up in elevation as compared to what we are as far as how cool we are, a lot of things do make sense. So it's been really neat crossing those two lines together. And while both were great on their own, crossing them together, the offspring from those have been tremendous. But the reason I bring that up is it's neat to be able to see and hear what you're not only doing time of the year for splits and things. We're doing all the same things, but the time frame squished. You know, you've got your season is. I can't even find my camera here with my fingers. Anyways, your season's big, and you do all those things. Ours is condensed in like a third of that time. We have to figure out all those things. But the tree that really starts things off here is 100% maple. And usually it's silver, red, and then sugar maple. This year at the farm, our sugar maples are already budding out hard, and they're going to be blooming. I'm expecting to see blooms in the next probably 2-3 weeks. And what's interesting, reason I bring this up is Seth, being a fellow hillbilly, we look to nature, we look to critters, we look for the signs. I know down south, if you guys do it up north here, we look at the persimmon seeds if we have them, and look to see if it's a knife, spoon, or fork on how cold or how much snow we're going to get. It might be different for you, that of course, as far on the snow. We also look at the woolly caterpillar and his colors, and it kind of shows us how many rings of black versus how many brown, and then black. What's interesting is this year's woolly is identical to last year's woolly. And last year was the greatest beekeeping season that we have ever had as far as flow and the timing of it all.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that picked up on that. It's not that everybody that I work with is from the South. They are, but like they don't pick up on that kind of stuff. I guess it's not superstition, but you know what I mean. It's just like you said about the persimmon seeds and the woolies.
It's hillbilly intuition. It's tuned
Yeah,
up to nature.
exactly. It's following the old timers' intuition into stuff. And that I picked up on that as well. I was like, But
why that's a big deal is last year was tremendous for us up here. And
last year
going
was
by
a
those
great
signs
year.
that I see, and it is on my heart, hot and heavy, that this year is not only going to mirror last year, it's actually going to be even better. So I'm actually planning a lot of our growth and our splits and our timing and all that, because that compass that's in our heart, that truth that's written right there is just squawking hard, and that's the direction it's pulling me.
Yes,
and I really believe that. And so far, it seems like spring is yet just a hair earlier this year than it was last year. And last year it came early, it came fast and furious. And while we were here, we were in cool weather, wishing we were in bees. It only took a split second, and we were elbows deep in it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's already like that for me having to go south. I'm, jumping in head first. It seems like I need 2 more months of winter to catch up. I loved your podcast the other day. Don't be left behind or whatever. That was the living embodiment of my operation right now.
Well, but, I'm glad you're listening. What?
Oh, absolutely.
It's you said a lot of just solid, awesome quotes. But the one that we all hear from Ben Franklin is, if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. And that's a fact. This is that time of year. If you already don't have it written down, even on a diner napkin, what this year looks like, you might find yourself in a pretty sore position because spring is coming fast. It's going to be furious. And if you are looking for bees or packages or nukes or queens or equipment, if you aren't getting all those things lined up in Ohio, you are about to be too late. If you're in Seth's neck of the woods and you don't have that figured out, the season's already started. Yeah. So
unless you find broke guys like me, then they might try to help you out. But
and if Seth needs the cash flow that next expansion, maybe he peels off a single or two, and you just never know. But that's the cool thing about beekeeping is while it is so tremendously variable and different. What I love about it is the bees are the conduit to each other, and we can recognize that. We can still make what seems like a mistake. We can learn from it. We can find that silver lining. We can turn that negative into a positive if we're having the right mindset. Seth, it's been an honor having you on tonight, sharing with you not only who Seth Hill is as a beekeeper, but as a person. And I'm looking forward to seeing all things Seth Hill on the Appalachian Bee Ranch. Seth, do you have any final thoughts before we close it out?
Not much, man. I was just going to say, we work with one of the hardest people to work with in the entire universe. Her name is Mother Nature, and she is insert, the word. There we go. But, and like I said earlier, she's the house and she always wins. You just got to cash out on what you can and really try to work with what she gives you. And she's kind of a trickster. She drops subtle hints like your woolly caterpillars and, the persimmon seeds and the moon phases and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay. And, if you learn to read her, and Bob reads into Mother Nature a lot.
Big time.
In his experience, he has learned to kind of coincide with what she's going to do, so to speak. It's not an exact science. It's an art. So that's just my final thoughts. Oh, I have one more awesome quote. I thought about it a minute ago and no subject matter really came up to really justify it. But another force multiplier of mine, I guess, would be, now this is going to be a little bit to keep up with, so y'all might want to write this down. 2 is 1, 1 is none, and 3 is spare parts.
Nice.
Yeah. Just remember that along your journey. And I promise you, when something takes a crap and you got a brand new one right there in the box waiting on you, you plug it in or you hook it up or you do whatever, it's ready to go. It makes life so much easier. It's just not easy on your wallet sometimes. So
that is the prepper, the homesteader, the farmer. That is the what we say here all the time.
Yes, sir.
2 is 1, 1 is none, and 3's for me.
Yeah,
Most
buddy.
that's because I can't find anything because I'm not the best housekeeper with my tools. But the other thing is sometimes the tools walk off or they break or you can't find it. Having that third one laying around, man, that can really get you out of a dig you out of there. So
yes,
Seth,
sir.
thanks again for spending time with us tonight. I want to thank everyone here in the comments, everyone listening at the Nature's Image Farm podcast, all the folks who hung out with us tonight here on the YouTube channel live chat, and then everyone listening to the replay. Hey, we thank you. We really appreciate you guys. It makes all the difference in the world. Coming up this week, we've got the Stream Team Beekeeping Chat this Wednesday night. I believe that's over on Bruce Jenny's channel. If I'm wrong, it's on Brian Coper's Castle Hives channel. And if I'm wrong again, it'll be right here at Nature's Image Farm. Either way, check out those 3 channels. Check out our buddy Seth's brand spanking new YouTube channel, Appalachian Bee Ranch. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, drop at Rascal some comments, show him some love. That's what it's all about. These bees are just a conduit to the people. There's always something that we can do to be a lighthouse to somebody else. So as always, I want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change that you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.